where will you be if you go back to Asia? I said, I have no idea. Then he said, that's exactly it. Because it's not the destination. What's the fun if you already know where you will be in 20 years' time?
This is Shock Life Confession Podcast with me, Reza Abraham. Our guest today is a Cambridge University graduate in medical science and clinical medicine. He furthered his studies at Harvard School of Toxicology. He then pursued surgical training at Oxford and Imperial College School of Medicine. Then he was appointed as a consultant urological surgeon in the UK. And he's currently a consultant urological surgeon at Gleneagles and a clinical associate professor of surgery in Monash University. If that's not good enough, he's also known for his work as a travel photographer, storyteller, 3 times TED speaker, and author of 2 books. So let's welcome our guest today, Dr. George Lee.
Thank you so much, Isa. It's a pleasure. Not sure all that actually is absolutely true, but I will actually take them with great pleasure. Thank you so much for the kind invitation.
So we need to do some clarification here. so when I was writing the introduction, and you definitely set a remarkable high set of standard, at least academically, you know. So and it's like when you compare it with any other resume, it's just like pale in comparison.
Right.
So I mean, Cambridge, Harvard, Oxford, yeah. Imperial College, just like going to one, it's a dream of many.
Right.
So which one or which part of your education and career you are most proud of? Like, that's the hardest one.
Okay.
Even for you.
Well, you will never believe it. The hardest one actually was Sekolah Menengah Jenis Kebangsaan Chonghua. I think that probably in any Chinese schoolgoer will tell you that, you know, it's like military school.
Sure.
You know, your hair has a certain length, your socks have a certain length. And I really think that probably set the standards and the foundation for me.
Yes.
And then for me, you know, that was where I learned my superpower. Yeah. Do you know what it is?
What is it?
The real superpower in a Chinese school is memory. You memorize everything. So I guess that's probably what I thought was the real formula to get into wherever you want to go. I mean, I guess when we aspire to all these places, the first thing you think about is like medicine, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, and that sort of thing. And when you overcome your own fear or your own kind of inferiority complex, then you probably will just overcome all that. And then with that simple formula of if I memorize everything, nobody can fault you, and then you can get to where you want to be. However, sometimes that doesn't work out so well. So to answer your question, is the whole thing of going through a Chinese school in the midst of a whole Kelantan kind of upbringing is probably my toughest education background.
Nice. Yeah. Tell us about that. Tell us about your childhood. So what's your family look like? Are you a family of doctors or...
Absolutely not.
Okay.
My dad actually never even finished like secondary school. My dad was a bicycle seller in Kota Baru. My mom came in from China, kind of like after the Chinese Revolution, and then basically, she hates me mentioning it, but being shipped to Malaysia. Arranged married at the age of 16, 17, and then and basically had 4 kids, and we all grew up in Kota Baru. And Kota Baru is a wonderful place because it's a melting pot of all culture. It's absolute delight to grow up, but you also get very confused because one minute you're Chinese, next minute you're makan budu and kecek latte, and then next minute you are kind of aspiring to be an Oxford graduate. And so that itself probably gave me a little bit of confusion about what I wanted to be. But what I think it was most important thing was that when I was a kid living in Kota Baru, I always feel like life wasn't enough. I needed to do more. There are more that I can achieve. That's right. Okay. So I guess that's the reason why in 86, way before you were born, and then my dad, I persuaded a bicycle seller dad to stop smoking and then save all that cigarette money to fund.
That's a big sacrifice.
Yeah. Big sacrifice for a Kota Baru, man. And the interesting thing is that you will never know this, is that in 1986, it was the myth of the Thatcher administration in the UK. And one of the most interesting issues about Thatcherism is that the interest rate at that time was about 15%.
Yes.
And then, and then the other thing is that the exchange rate for Malaysian ringgit as compared to today, which is about 6 ringgit, was only 2 ringgit and 75 cents.
Wow.
Right? So, absolutely no brainer. That's right. That's exactly what my dad did and said, okay, we're going to have this lump sum of money. You go and study. Goodbye. And I won't need to see you again because your lifestyle will be sustained by the FD interest. And that's how I ended up not in the wonders of London. I actually ended up in a small town outside Belfast, a place in Northern Ireland.
Oh, Northern Ireland.
That's right.
Is this after what's the famous one? Bloody Sunday.
Oh,
is
yeah.
Like,
absolutely. I mean, it's like
which year is that?
The whole period in the 70s and 80s was called the Trouble. Essentially, IRA bombings and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and that's
there was a lot of trouble time.
Absolutely. And my dad didn't realize that to send me to a school called the Friends School. Friends is a Quaker school.
Oh, Society of Friends.
That's right. And then I had no idea what Friends was. I was just sent to a school in...
That's very similar to where you're coming from as well, right? Because Kelantan... also, they have like similar approach as like resilient, equality, they have like similar quality things as well. Right?
It's all kind of about alignment and also being nice to each other. And that's really
nice.
Very much of that culture, but I didn't understand.
Yes.
The biggest trouble about differentiating between you and others in Northern Ireland, the very first thing is whether you're Protestant or you're Catholic.
Yes, Catholic.
Okay, right. Okay. As a Buddhist child from Kelantan, when you're asked, are you Protestant or Catholic? My natural reaction was that I am a Buddhist.
So what is that?
Well, they asked me, are you a Protestant Buddhist or are you a Catholic Buddhist? Right? So that's how I ended up probably in a worse place that I imagined, because I aspired to the whole glory and the utopia of the United Kingdom, and suddenly, went to the UK and actually ended up in Northern Ireland. And then I thought that was my second challenge in life, that it kind of like made me a tougher person. Well, you can imagine growing up or receiving your education in an environment that there are bombs occurring from time to time. There were people dying, your friends' family were dying. And then it's not an ideal place for a late teenager to aspire to these kind of like bright future and suddenly be in. And also, I had a one-way ticket from my dad and said, look, you go and study until you succeed, then you come back.
Okay.
So I guess that was my second kind of like challenge in life, that I realized that if I don't get myself out of this hole, I will forever stuck in a worse place than Kota Baru.
Yeah. I still, when you mentioned about Kota Baru, the Kelantan, I used to have a friend when I first came to Malaysia. He was also Kelantanese, and then very bright kid.
We all are very bright.
Oh yeah, of course. So he used to tell us, like, Kelantan is like a cradle of the Malay culture, and they have these things called like Kelantanese nests. They say like we are very crass. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Stubborn,
That's right, yeah.
Like you say like, but that gives us a lot of resilience.
Yes.
It's like never give up. Anything you ask him, which is humanly it's impossible, he outwork you and he get it done.
Absolutely.
So that's something. But whose choice was that actually to go for like this education that you go for? Was it something like you set it up? Well,
I actually, when I was in Kota Baru, and I went to a Chinese school, and naturally you don't really get that exposure of English education. My mother insisted that I should get tuition like a good Chinese school student. You need to do that. And there was a Irishman who actually opened a international school in Kota Baru, and he became my tutor. And he was the one who persuaded my dad to quit smoking and sent me to the glorious place of Northern Ireland to get education. So if I were to blame anyone, Ray Hall is to be blamed for it. But actually that changed my whole life in many ways. So that set my path in the unknown, and that resilience comes in, right? Because, one of the ways I define success in life actually fundamentally is how many holes you can get out of, right? Okay.
Right.
So we all fall into these kind of like dark holes, and we had challenges in life. And the worst thing is that if you face these troubles and you can't get out of it. And then so the way I looked at it was that I was in a big trouble when I was in Northern Ireland, not anticipating where I was going to be, because, you know, the only history I learned in Malaysia was about the Hang Tuah and Hang Jebat from the Malacca. When people started asking me whether I know anything about the Holocaust, the First World War, Second World War, I knew nothing about it. And I suddenly realized that I was in a place where all my superpower that I learned from school and Chinese school, that I can just memorize everything, didn't really get me very far.
Okay. So what was your second superpower?
Yeah, my second.
Let's get forward.
That's right. The resilient, obviously, is superpower number one. And number two is the stubbornness, the keras, the perseverance. So I realized that if you are hardworking enough, which is what most Malaysians and all Asians are, and if you memorize enough 20 years of, let's say, past papers of all your A-levels and O-levels and that sort of thing, surely all the question will come out, and then you'll get to where you want to be. And that's exactly what I did. And I basically straight A's, scored everything that I needed to be, and I ended up in the kind of like, in Cambridge with that. But however, I got in by fluke, because when they interview you, because like 30,000 kids had similar quality.
That's right.
You're right. Okay, straight A's, and then they've, been to Botswana, and, I actually, volunteered in refugee camps and that sort of thing. But what they want to set you apart is your uniqueness. And then one thing that's quite unique about me was I had no idea where I was going in for. And then so there were three parts of the interview to decide whether they should, enroll you or not, which I completely, went in by fluke. Basically, they ask you questions like, can you show me your CV? At that time, I had no CV. And when I realized that one needs to produce your CV, the night before, I started writing handwritten CV. And they found it quite quaint, right? They say, wow, handwritten CV, who would have been done that for Cambridge? The second question they asked me was, if you were in a lake holding a piece of ice, and that kilo of ice is thrown into the lake, will your boat sink a little or float a little? So
I think nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen, right? Okay. In fact, until today, I had no idea what the answer is, because when I was asked that question, I got a little bit worried, because in Cambridge system, they actually enroll you to a college. And then so in college, they have natural scientists, mathematicians, economists. And I really was quite troubled that whether I was in the right room. So I stood up, went to the door and looked at the front of the door to make sure that it says medicine. And then the interviewer stopped me and said, "What are you doing, Mr. Lee?" I said, "I'm checking whether, this is the right room for it." The guy said, "That's exactly what we wanted you to do, because we want you to challenge the authority for something." But I wasn't challenging. I was merely just curious that I was in the right room. And the third reason why I was, the third interview part was that when they asked me what did I think about the morality, the ethics of doing animal experiment for, betterment of science. And the first thing that I imagine when you do animal experiments is kind of like get a few stray dogs and cats and probably put on some probes and then something and electrocute the dogs and cats. Well, when I mentioned that in the interview, one of the interviewers' jaw was dropped on the floor. The other one laughed and said, "That's a really lovely sense of humor. We really like that."
Okay.
That's right.
For a doctor.
For a doctor. So essentially, the whole thing was I got him by because I was unique. That's a guy that they thought that had good sense of humor, was willing to challenge authority, and can think on his feet.
Okay.
Little they knew that actually that was completely fluke. So it all became quite apparent that they made a mistake on enrolling me. It's when one of the person who probably influenced me the most, somebody called Mike Edwardson, who was the person who dropped his jaw when I mentioned about animal experiment. And when he realized that when I tried to memorize all that subjects in medicine, it's obviously impossible. And then I always thought that if you have gone to a scrutiny of Chinese school, you definitely can do it. But I didn't manage to do it because I could just not memorize everything. I remember the first exam that I went through actually was anatomy exams. And the exams asked one question. The clavicle, our collarbone, is the marvel of creation. Discuss.
Oh.
So it's 3 hours to discuss that subject. I looked through it, there's no other questions on that paper. So I started thinking, I could memorize the whole chapter on clavicle. Why don't I plonk it in there? Somewhere in there is an answer. But guess what? I scored 0. Because you're not answering the question. When you ask whether it's marvel of creation, you generally need to think. You need to think, why is it shaped like that? Why is it, has attachment? Why is it positioned like that? But the whole things that differentiate between you and the others in Cambridge is generally boiled down to one word, to think.
Yeah.
So my Edwardson said to me, look, the moment we saw you, we thought that you could think for yourself. You could be the person who lead rather than be led. And we made a mistake. You need to go. And that was exactly what happened to me at the end of the first year in Cambridge. And that's when I had the rude awakening that, for God's sake, you have to think for yourself from now on. So I begged this guy and said, look, you have to give me another chance. From now on, I promise you I'll think for myself. And so the motto of my life from that point onward is that you have to think for yourself.
Nice.
No matter how small, how insignificant you think your contribution is, but it's still your contribution, and therefore think for yourself is absolutely crucial.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that applies to almost anybody, it's like, and it doesn't matter which field you are, so
absolutely.
You have to be able to I'm not I don't have a great memory like you. We learn how to, because I always believe like there is no such thing as a good memory, bad memory. It's all about trained memory and untrained memory, right? So either you use it or you lose it, as simple as that.
Completely agree.
But the ability to be able to rationalize, to think, and that's what kind of differentiates you from others, because anybody can just memorize everything.
Exactly. So one of the key, I teach in Monash University now, and many of my students get, really, really worried when they come to my class is because I ask them that nobody present any PowerPoint. If you know your fundamentals enough, you don't need anything. You need to think and you need to actually apply what you know and then present it that way. And then I think that's probably set me apart from all the other lecturers, and also at that point set me apart as a person, as an academician, and as a doctor.
Okay, so thinking about like your lifetime that you have, so you've been there and all your career after that, if you want to think about like someone who you are very grateful for, the person that actually influenced you the most, which part of your life would you go for?
Okay, so the person that influenced me the most at that point initially in the university probably was Mike Edwardson. But the second person who actually made me realize that when you really are established, when you're in a comfort zone, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And that's the second person. His name is Sir Roy Khan, who sadly just passed away a few months ago at the age of 90s. And then he was nominated in the 60s for the discovery for a drug called cyclosporin that made transplantation possible. And he was my boss. And for many years, I was really aspired to be who he is, right? Okay, really well established, well accomplished. But he always pointed out one thing to me. He said, George, why are you always so miserable when you're working in the NHS? Anyone who worked in the NHS will tell you that it's a bureaucracy that makes you miserable. But he said, it's not just a bureaucracy. And I suddenly realized one thing, that I've lived my life for 21 years in a foreign land. Often think what it would life be like if I've gone back to Asia. And then he asked me, what would life have been like if you continue to stay in the UK? I said, I'll be you. I'll get your job when you die. Right? And then he said, then you know exactly where you'll be. Where will you be if you go back to Asia? I said, I have no idea. Then he said, that's exactly it. because it's not the destination. What's the fun if you already know where you will be in 20 years' time? However, if you choose to go back to Asia, you don't really know where you'll be. Carve up your own life. I know it's a cliche. People say that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And that changed everything. In fact, my second book in Mandarin is actually called 生命没有如果. 生命 means life. 没有如果 means there's no if. So in fact, this is a dedication to him, because he told me that in life there's no if. Because there's no point 30 years down the line and you look back with regret and say, what if I made that choice to go back to Asia? And best thing that has happened to me 15 years, 17 years ago, in 2006, I realized that if I don't do it now, when? So it changed my life completely. So the second person who changed my life a lot is Sir Roy Khan.
Nice. So just like you mentioned about NHS, have you watched this documentary called Confessions of Junior Doctors?
Yes, of course.
That is an amazing one, right? Yes. You know, and one of the when I was actually watching it for some times, and then there was this because they did like about 60,000 doctors that they mentioned that 2/3 of them, in fact, are going through like massive depression, burning out, you know, and then so I have a lot of questions around that area. Of course, these are like a hot topics one, so we try to keep it short because each one of them is a podcast type of question. So why is it so tough for the doctors, especially junior doctors? Why they have to go through so much of stress when they are like, you know, when they are basically saving people's lives, but they still have to go through it? Is it like common Malaysia?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there are two parts to that. Number one is hierarchy, you know. So because the whole idea about having a training in medicine, it's all about you follow the rules because all the rules have been set. If you deviate from the rules, people die from this.
Yes.
So, for example, you know, if there's surgeons, and as a surgeon, you really want to make sure that whoever succeeds, you really have to be well trained, and then you will make sure that they are meticulous enough and no mistakes shall be made. And under that circumstance, you really need to go through that grilling. Right, okay.
High pressure.
Absolutely. The second part is exactly that high pressure. It's because in my time, there were no working time directive. It's like, you know, you take the pager on a Friday morning, you don't let go of the pager until Monday evening. And continuously, you survive that. And I think in the modern medical training, although there's a lot of pressure, however, it's not like the old days. I speak like a dinosaur now because there's no such things, because it's illegal, because, you know, we follow the whole idea of training a pilot to make it safe. But in those days, the only way to make you tough is that no matter what time the nurse call you, you get yourself out there, you get your adrenaline going, you make sure that as soon as you have that knife in your hand, that adrenaline will get you going to get that patient out of trouble. And that's how we were trained, and that's how, in some way, it is deliberate. But every parent's dream of their kids becoming doctors.
Yes, that's my next question.
Right?
Would you recommend your kids to be one?
So every parents want their kids to become doctors. So there are some kids who generally don't want to be there, and there are some kids who generally cannot be there.
Yes.
So under that circumstance, you get a large number of people perhaps who are having second thoughts, who have doubt, and all under that circumstance, when you don't show that 100% commitment, then you will feel the pain. So under that circumstance, we as a system need to support those people to get out of that situation. So therefore, resilience comes in. My Kelantanese comes in, is that no matter how much of a deep hole you're in, no matter what sort of mistakes you made, you have to fight another day. And that is genuinely the way to survive medicine.
You remind me of this book, When Breath Become Air. Have you read the book?
No.
Oh my God, this is a fantastic, it's a really, really good book. It's called When Your Breath Become Air, from, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Paul Kalanithi. So he's a neurosurgeon, very, very prominent doctor as well in the state. And what happened is that he just got a lung cancer. And in a year or something, he passed away. So he wrote the book, and he actually mentioned exactly what you just said. It's like, counting every day, appreciating, being grateful for it. And he actually never made it to finish the book as well.
Yeah.
So his wife finished it off, and the stress, like I developed a lot of sense of appreciation when I read that book, because it really like, why do doctors have to go through such a pressure, so much of stress?
Yeah.
And I get the point of the resilience, right? And this is the questions I want to ask you is like, so did you encourage your kids to become a doctor?
Well, actually, I didn't, but I asked them to freely decide whatever they want to do. And interestingly, the moment both my kids decided that there's no way that they can actually get anywhere near medical field, is when both of us were, all three of us were in the ski slope. Suddenly my phone rang. I was answering the phone in the ski slope, and my two kids said, "Dad, we're not going to to have life like you because there are easier way to make money."
Okay.
And
so what do they do?
Imagine that the way they look at it is money. So they're both investment bankers.
Oh,
I know. However, I recently just visited them, and they both were in London, and I visit them on regular basis. Guess what? Their life is equally tough like how it used to be, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I told them,
it's a different type of toughness, I would say.
Well, I guess, if they make mistakes, people lose money. If I make mistakes, people lose lives, right? Okay. So it's equally tough. And I said to them, there's no easy job in life. If you pick that easy job, you already made a mistake.
That's
because in that job itself, it's simply the wrong job.
Yeah. I think what you say make a lot of sense as well. It's the consequences. The consequences in your type of job, it's way higher compared to like somebody just losing money, right?
That's right.
That's why, there was this quote from, they say like, when your money, when your wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When your health is lost, something is lost. When your character is lost, everything is lost.
Absolutely.
So,
definitely.
So health, it's definitely is like among those that if it's lost, there's something been lost. So one questions I always have is that, is there such things as like A-class doctor, B-class doctor, C-class doctor? Because in any occupation, you name it, right?
Yeah.
There is always someone who is like dominant. You're pretty good at what they're doing, alpha, top 1%.
Yeah.
So do we have something like that? Because when we look at the doctors, we're always thinking of, they're doctors.
That's right.
So whatever they say, we have to just say yes.
Okay.
So is there something as like A doctor, B?
I find it interesting that, people kind of like can perceive that. But I'll give you an example. When I was in Oxford, I was a transplant surgeon.
Okay.
Okay. As a transplant surgeon, as a urologist, a transplant surgeon, I retrieve organs from the kidneys. So we have this pecking order, right? Okay, when a patient has decided to donate their organs, the first thing is a cardiothoracic surgeon will fly in the helicopter, and then they will have everybody carrying their, equipment for them. Then somebody will open the chest, and then he will or she will hold on to the beating heart, and then look around you and say, "They think I have God complex? I am God."
I can imagine the visual of Hollywood
That's
movies.
right. So all of us will just have to kind of go roll our eyes and say, yeah, whatever, right? Okay. So that's alpha male or alpha doctor. So that's character number one. The second pecking order are the liver surgeons. So they will come in because as soon as the heart is taken out, then you have a short period of time when you have to get the perfusion going with the liver. So the liver surgeon will come in with no heart but trying to retrieve the liver. And then they are the second tier, kind of like a liver surgeon. And then they will say, okay, we're not quite God, but we still have God complex. Then last in the pecking order are the urologists, because the kidneys are still viable even 12 hours after the heart stopped beating. So after they've taken everything, then they say the urologists will come in. Even the nurses will have no respect for you and say, switch off the lights when you finish sewing.
Oh my God.
Right. So
that's offensive.
It is offensive, but we are the coolest. We're the nicest people. So it's okay. We don't necessarily have to be the alpha male, but we are the nice male. We're the nice doctors.
So what makes you say that? Why did you pick urology?
Okay, right. Okay. I mean, the unofficial answer, I get asked this a lot. It's like, why would you pick urology? But actually, truth enough, I work for, in Cambridge, I work for somebody called Nigel Bullock. In Oxford, I work for John Dick. in London, I work for Andrew Ball. So I always tell people that it won't work for Ball, Dick and Bollock. You definitely become a urologist. And that usually gets a bit
destiny, you know? Like a calling, you know?
Imagine I'm called William, or Willie the urologist. That will be tragic, right? Okay. However, but the reality is that I think one of the reasons why I pick urology is I always find that urologists are really savior for mankind. Yeah, because
why is that?
I think mankind is not so kind to men because see that you like that one. Okay, I think one of the issues that although 70% of my clients are men, but I think one of the challenging things in the 21st century, or even throughout mankind, you realize that men often have shorter life expectancy. Right, even though statistically and scientifically, men are the stronger gender when it comes to overall health.
Yes.
But men always die younger.
Why is that?
Sometimes people say it's because of risk-taking behavior.
Yes.
We smoke more, we drive faster car and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Even if you take that out of the equation, you also see that men die at least 5 years ahead of their female counterparts.
I think all countries are the same.
Every single country from Swaziland to Japan is the same. It's boiled down to one thing: treatment-seeking behavior.
Oh, so they think like, I should just like keep quiet,
That's
keep to
right.
myself.
Yeah, okay. So for example, if you tell a woman that you got breast lump, you need to go and see a doctor. Before the clinic opens, they will be there. If you tell a man you got a testicular lump, you need to go and see a doctor. They will observe that lump for another 2 months and say, I think it's getting smaller. It's because of this whole fear. There's a lot of ignorance, the lack of awareness, it's a fear, there's ego, there's all combination of all these. They can only go and see doctor when they're ill. Women see doctor regardless of whether they're ill or not. When you're having your menses, you're not ill. When you're pregnant, you're not ill. But men will service their car on time, but never service their body until it's broken.
Yep, that's true.
So that's when the urologist comes in, that we will change a lot of that. So we are the people, we're the advocate for mankind.
I see.
We're the savior for men's health.
So what's the funniest things ever happened to you in the ward or anywhere that's, I don't know.
All right, okay.
Ever happened?
Oh, well, actually, I guess the funny thing is that, talk about awareness, that, sometimes men mistakenly think that a vasectomy is actually a castration. Right, okay. So sometimes, one particular example is that I had a man coming for a vasectomy, and then when I asked a man to wait outside when I'm getting the operating theatre ready, and he ran off.
Oh.
All right. So about a year later...
I'm wondering who brought him there.
That's right.
In the first place.
Yeah. A year later, he was brought back by a pregnant woman, and then the pregnant woman said, did this man come for a vasectomy? I said, well, he did turn up, but didn't successfully get one because he ran off. And then it's like, apparently this guy went home and told the wife that he had the vasectomy. And then obviously when the wife was pregnant, and she wasn't too pleased. So
that it's your fault.
That's right.
Oh,
so the wife decided that, she said, I would like to watch this happen, and then I would like you to do it in front of me. So obviously when he was getting changed, then he was shivering, and he asked me one question: Doctor, after you remove my testicles, what are you doing with them? Then I said,
oh my God, that's a comedy show.
That is a comedy show by itself. When I said, look, I spent half an hour explaining to you that I'm going to snip a small part of the vase, and you think I'm going to remove your testicle, and you agreed to it. And he said, you saw how fierce my wife is, you think I have a choice? So this kind of like epitomized the whole thing about men, right? First of all, you have no awareness and you don't want to find out because you're quite scared. And the next thing is that you would rather bury your head under the sand, is because you rather just not know about it. 6 children later, he was still thinking that vasectomy is castration.
Okay.
Because the neighbors told him that.
So to finish things off, we have this very quick game called Final Confessions.
Oh.
Which I'm going to ask you some fiery quick questions.
Okay.
And you have to answer it as fast as possible.
Right.
You ready?
Okay.
All right, let's do it. So what's the most fascinating medical fact you have learned that it still blows your mind?
Oh, okay. Okay, that's one thing. The rest of a man's body will shrink as we age, including our hand, our head, our brain, everything will shrink. Guess what won't shrink?
Okay, I'm not going to answer that question.
It's the prostate. The prostate is the only organ that will continue to grow. And that's why men have to wake up at night to pass urine because of blockage. So that will make sure urologists will forever be employed. And then because that's
a sustainable
fact. Yeah. It's an interesting fact that, every part of your body will shrink apart from your prostate.
Nice. Thank you. That was very educational. That was very educational as well, right?
So So soon enough, you'll come to see me.
Okay. So if you could prescribe one fun activity to all your patients for better health, what would that be?
Oh, well, I would say sleep.
Sleep?
That's right.
Right.
I think in the 21st century, we don't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
And then we underestimate the power of sleep.
Oh, I have seen people actually, they say, sleeping is a waste of time.
Okay. Well, that's just like Michael Douglas saying that lunch is for wimps, right? In Wall Street, right? Okay. The reality is that our brain is probably the most important organ, and our brain controls many hormones. Like, for example, your urination hormones, your cortisols, your stress hormones, and also sleep keep you young.
Yeah.
And the sleep itself has many parts. It has the deep sleep, the REM sleep, non-REM sleep, and during that sleep, our brain goes through a circadian cycle in releasing that hormone. And we don't understand it fully, but what we understand in the 21st century, when we have the handphone actually emitting Blu-ray into you, your brain is tricked because 500 years ago, there were no lights. But now we can't differentiate between day and night. So we are not getting enough sleep.
How many hours do you sleep?
Oh, I sleep 7 hours at least.
Okay, that's
good. And then I really think that is the key and the simplest thing to keep you young and keep you energized.
Okay, that's great. Arnold used to say, then sleep faster. So what's the most unusual doctor's orders you have ever had to give to a patient?
Oh, the unusual order. Okay. I guess one of the things that we do, it's like you're going to say, well, obviously earlier on I mentioned about vasectomy, right? Okay. So imagine that after a vasectomy, somebody needs to evacuate the remaining semen so that they don't pregnant the counterpart, right? Okay. And in order to do that, most people will wait for 3 months until the remaining sperms actually disintegrate. However, you can fast track this by actually have more ejaculations, right? Okay. So when I mention this, or we can always come back 3 months later, or about 30 ejaculation later, according to science. So one guy came back 2 weeks later and said, done. I was going like, do you not have anything else to do in life? So that is probably the most unusual instruction I gave to somebody, and they follow it right to the actual number of times. Oh, I guess that is quite funny.
Okay, I think that answered my next question as well. So, in the field of medicine, who would you crown as the coolest doctor of all time?
Oh, without a doubt. Urologist, right? So without a doubt. I'll tell you why.
If you say something different, I would be surprised.
That's why I'll be surprised. I'll tell you why. Okay, first of all, if for those people who kind of follow me on Instagram, they say, how can he live like this, right? 1 minute he's going to travel, this, I say. Because in urology, there's hardly any emergency that cannot wait. Oh. Right, okay. For example, if a kidney stone, we can always operate on tomorrow. If a patient cannot urinate, can always do that tomorrow. So that gives us quality of life. So hence a 7-hour sleep, right? Okay. The second thing is that we have the coolest toy in the world. We have lasers, we have robots, we have scopes, we have all sorts of things. And that itself, actually all your misspent use in Atari. You don't know what Atari is.
I know.
Oh, you're showing your age. You're right. Okay. All that, on the Space Invaders actually trained me to become a urologist because of all these hand-eye coordinations, right? Okay. And the other thing is that, I'm being hashtag the sperm hunter. So for men who cannot have children, I have the microscope to look for the sperms in order to do that. So that's cool enough. If you don't think that's cool enough, and in our line of job, we can treat from children from circumcision from cradle to grave, for older men with enlarged prostate, for women who have recurrent urinary tract infection, for more serious things like cancer. So it's a wide range of all these fantastic medical conditions that keeps me waking up every morning saying to myself,
I'm reconsidering already becoming a doctor. Okay, so...
No, not becoming a doctor, becoming a urologist.
Urologist. Okay, so which one is the toughest doctor to become?
Oh, I told you about transplantation. I couldn't do it. I think I did it for 2 years and I really, really enjoyed it because of Sir Roy Khan. But every time I had to ask a family to sign on a dotted line to accept that their loved one has brain dead and we're here to make their loved one's organ to carry on the legacy to the next person, I really think that is the most heartbreaking thing. And then every time it got me, and I think that itself, it's probably the hardest thing as a doctor that you can do.
Okay. So which one is the easiest doctor to become?
Oh, the 21st century probably make radiologists the easiest. Right, okay. Do you know why?
They're all gonna hate us for that.
Yeah. Well, seriously, it's like I have students, I have trained many students, and I realize that for those who want to continue to live life with that better work-life balance, they become radiologists. It's because they can actually they can do their job anywhere in the world, from Kathmandu to Barrier Reefs, and then they can just have a computer, fix the time they need to be in front of a computer, all the images sent to them, and then they can make the diagnosis, and that's it. And I really think even better these days that AI will tell them what to say,
they don't need
and then
to
they look at it and say, "Oh yes," and then that's it. I get paid for
so
it.
They just need to say, "Oh yes."
So in my next reincarnation, I want to be a cool radiologist.
All right, you can definitely become one. So my last question is this one: if you have been given the honor to become the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and you can make one change, and anything you ask for, it would be done.
All right.
What would you do?
Well, improve men's health. Right, okay. I really think that we need to have more men-friendly clinics in many ways. So just judging on the number of prostate cancer presented late, men who have infertility issues, prostate issues that left until renal failure, I think just create a clinic that men can just go there and just get a simple checkup. So you don't even have to call it a clinic, just call it a men's service center, because then that takes away the taboo. And I really think that hopefully one day men and women's health will somehow reach some sort of equilibrium and equality.
Nice. Dr. George, thank you very much for being with us. It was an honor talking to you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you again.
Most welcome. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. And until next time, stay tuned and keep an in control life and career.